You know, I just have to say before you ask a question that the last time I showed this was in Transylvania last November, Thanksgiving, and I didn't know obviously anybody in the audience, and it was fun. People started getting into a fight about. One guy said, "Gee, I wish the mayor of this town was as nice as Milton Gla- Milton Glaser," and they said, "Well, our mayor is just fine," and a big melee of fighting. So I'm happy to see so many adored friends of mine here today. I'm really grateful, and the fact that you're all super smart makes me completely intimidated. So,
Let's start simple then.
okay.
What? How did you know Milton Glaser, and why did you want to make a film? I mean, this is your first film, so it must have been a real call from the heart. And I presume you don't have to call Ava every day for a month to talk to him.
No, no. Actually, Milton, as you may have seen, did a bunch of posters for my husband, who was a concert producer, my first husband, Gary Keys. And I didn't really know him in those days, but we came to know each other because we were both involved with the International Design Conference in Aspen. And Milton was the major domo, really, of the event, and I would do the film program for whatever theme they had come up with each year. And what it was sort of an A-list group of designers and architects who once a year would gather in Aspen in June, and one of them would produce a conference every year with a different theme. So my work would apply to whatever the theme was. And it was fun to program for architects and designers, because the film had to be good looking. It had to have a liberal bent, but I wanted to stretch them just a little bit, but not too far. So, and Milton and I became very fast friends. I sat beside him at the board meetings, and he would do drawings for me, some of which are at the church show that April chose. And I paid 25 cents for each one of them, so we both felt good about that. And but my motivation was I was at an event at Checkerboard Film Foundation. They had a roll of the artists and architects that they had made films about, and I think there really should be a designer here too in their archive. And so I pitched the story to them that it should be Milton Glaser and I have to do it. And they thought that was a fine idea, but it was my initial observation was amplified a couple of days later by the fact that I was at a funeral for Henry Wolfe, Susan knows. And I thought, wouldn't it be terrible if something happened to Milton without a record of him as a man? Because his work is in books, but he's such an extraordinary man, as you could see from the film, his generosity, his curiosity, the fact that he had completely turned around the design field with assistance from his pushpin colleagues, but the impact of him, of changing eating habits of New Yorkers. I mean, this kind of thing just had to be chronicled. And at first I thought that maybe I would just shoot him because we had a nice relationship. And I thought I would give the footage to a more accomplished filmmaker. And then I thought, no, I'm not giving this up. I'm keeping this footage for myself.
Was it hard? There is a line up towards the end of the film that says Milton's very private. He's a very public person. He's out there, but he's very private. Did he say yes right away?
Oh, yes. We had lunch, and I said that this is what I would like to do. And he said he's never had a full-fledged film made about him. And I had never made a film before, or since, actually. And he said, well, why don't we make this a learning experience for the both of us? So he would pull me aside every couple of weeks and say, what are the surprises you have? And what have you learned from this, which is so typical of Milton, because teaching, curiosity, mentorship was so ingrained in his personality. It was such a strong force that was, it was like breathing for him, the fact that he wanted to dedicate so much of his life and work to the betterment of society. It sounds, kind of tweety, but it's true. I mean, he really did so much pro bono work for the things that he believed in, and this is a big part of what I wanted to chronicle.
It's as I was saying, at the beginning, the show at the church is so intellectually invigorating. You really feel the creativity, and how the creativity is applied to the betterment of things. And how would you expand on his influence and the Pushpin studio artist on the city? I wasn't living in this; it was too early for me to be there. But it seems like that they really put a twist on New York.
They did, absolutely. And it was a moment when people were thinking more about designers and identifying them. And I think that moment is past, sadly. But I think, and I've always thought that designers don't get the recognition that architects and artists have, and that their names are in the mainstream conversation. Designers aren't that well known, but there was that moment when people would say, did you see that latest George Lois cover of Esquire magazine? Or did you see Paul Davis's new poster for Joe Papp? And that's what I wanted to do, was to amplify recognition, it's a little grandiose of my to say that, but I do feel that a lot of people in the design fields are under-recognized. And in fact, I did at Lincoln Center, I curated 2 design shows. One of them was a 3-day festival of movie title designers. And the other was about a week of production and costume designers. And the people came from all over the world on their own dime. I had no budget. They were so thrilled to finally, and grateful that they were being acknowledged. And they're brilliant people, and their contributions to the films that they make are indispensable, but they're never really properly acknowledged. So that was another little part of what I wanted to do.
One thing that I was curious about is your choices of the music. Why did you choose this particular? It's clearly a specific choice.
Yes. Well, I like the idea of keeping it light and bright. And Hayes Greenfield, somebody just told me that they worked with him. They're good friends. Oh, sorry, Bruce. I'm sorry. Not somebody, Bruce. And he was charming, adaptable. It was fast, cheap. I love the guy. So, and I think, sometimes we played maybe a little, it was too playful with the African art, with a but I just couldn't resist. So, and there were other things I couldn't resist. I had thought that I wouldn't do a lot of the documentary tropes like baby pictures and talking heads, but I realized I needed other people to say things about Milton that Milton couldn't say himself. And of course, I couldn't resist those baby pictures. I mean, he was incredibly funny looking as a baby.
And raise your hand if you want to ask questions. And you were talking about designers and the importance of designers. And to me, what's particularly exciting about the film is it's very clear how the design is not just an aesthetic thing, but is a reflection of values. Mm-hmm. And and our the word is mentioned, humanistic values, and is that part of what interested you? It wasn't just beautiful, but had incarnated an idea, a democratic idea of the city. Is where high and low can coexist. It was kind of giving guidelines to the inhabitants and as an Italian to the foreigners. I remember seeing the designs.
Right. Well, he gave permission for people to explore things in the city. He was, as you could tell, the last passage, he was mad for New York City and did so much for the city. But it was that sort of intellectual back thinking that brought out these beautiful designs, and that's what interested me. In fact, the first time I saw him speak in Aspen, I was stunned that someone who was so visual could be so verbal, and that there was so much thinking behind everything. But he wasn't pretentious about it. It was just there. And he made an enormous impact. And, Walter Bernard is here, and he's such a great presence on film. You should be interviewed all the time. But what Milton did for service magazines, which didn't really exist before, doing, writing to help people, not like the New Yorker who's teaching you and broadening your intellectual horizons, but New York Magazine was telling you how to deal with your landlord and where to buy the best pastrami and how to enter a chili contest. And, so it was this fun, and it really brought New York along. And then, of course, that whole idea exploded around the world. Every city has a magazine like this now, but it didn't exist. I mean, Clay Felker did the literary part, the Tom Wolfe and Gloria Steinem stuff. And Milton did the Underground Gourmet, and as well as the design. And please correct me, Walter, if I'm getting this wrong, because you were right there.
Well, it was a collaboration, to say the least.
Would you get a mic?
Oh, what was the question? Milton and Clay both owned the magazine and collaborated very closely. And so I can say that it's the idea of Clay only doing a certain kind of story and Milton doing another was true. As a matter of fact, Clay was very interested in service, so much so that Jimmy Breslin quit the magazine because he didn't like the idea of showing television listings or theater or movies. He just wanted to do stories about the city. And he really did not like when we did service on the cover, which of course was very important to the magazine. Milton loved the idea of food, as you can see from this film, and therefore the Underground Gourmet and the idea of food competitions like the best pastrami sandwiches or the pizza or a jug wine tasting were all, some of those were his ideas, but we had a lot of great editors who all contributed.
Thank you for the clarification, Walter.
Wendy, there is a passage in the film where he talks about, everybody being in the same room and everybody listening to everything, so you don't have to repeat it, and then more ideas come out for that. How could you describe the atmosphere of where he was working? Because you must have spent a lot of time in there.
I was there a lot. And I was there before I did the film because I would go and ask Milton to do a poster for me for something at Lincoln Center, which he always did pro bono. And he would, if I had a friend who had a film he would do it pro bono. So I was there quite often begging and receiving. And but when shooting there, you do realize how much he loves the company of people, and it helps the process of the finished result is the collaborative sitting there talking it through and drawing through it and seeing surprises that come up. But I'm really glad Vanden Heuvel, Catherine Vanden Heuvel, Katrina, thank you, I knew that was wrong, said that he was intimidating, because I wanted somebody to say that, because he was big and, important, and he had a way when he wanted to get his message across that was intimidating, and even, I don't mean to be telling stories out of school, but even Deborah, who did the Walmart's bottle, when I talked to her, personally, she said he was a little scary, but everybody loved him so much and they were honored to work with him. So it kept a sort of a buzz, going all the time of people who were working with him with that sort of little hidden element of fear.
And something like The Nation. I mean, the idea that he would do The Nation, I'm sure he shared a passion for the politics, but the idea that a magazine, The Nation, can have such design, and it really matters. It matters still today.
And for free. I mean, that's what's so amazing about him.
April has a question.
His generosity is so profound, and I think it shows through in every aspect of his work. I mean, it's definitely in the way that he would make things for free for people. Never made a dime from the I Love New York campaign, etc. But there's also there's a prescience about him, I think. I wish he were still alive so he could look at how fine art, so-called, has been re-examining itself, and other forms of art and other forms of materials are being more and more accepted with the same, it's a different value, but an equal value to so-called fine art. And I'm saying this as a painter. But for instance, when you're looking at art made of fabric, et cetera, I think he would have delighted in stuff like that. And I just want to say, Wendy, I think you were so unbelievably smart and prescient to make this film about him when you did. And everything that you cover, from all the research and stuff that I've done on him, is absolutely the heart of this film. So I just wanted to say, huge kudos to you. It's much more impactful for me now, kind of course, from the first time that we saw it. I don't know if everybody here knows that this film was shown as part of our pre-opening of the Sag Harbor Cinema. When we were a little idea. It hadn't really been rebuilt yet. So it's so wonderful to see it again. And I can't tell you how moving it is.
Thank you, April.
Very
and thank
important.
Thank you for including it in your Pushpin show, really.
And to the point, it was shown virtually because it was during the pandemic where we actually could not open. And we had a virtual conversation between Wendy and Walter. And I love it that it's big because you can see how big, you can see that imposing figure, which is imposing of the intellect,
Yes.
but you can feel it on a bigger screen. So I'm really glad we got to do it.
Good.
And Paul, hold on for the mic.
The work, I was at Pushpin from 1959 until 1963. So that was way before you made this film. And we were all in one room, all together. We listened to the radio every day. We listened to Stella Dallas. And we listened to other radio stations, or music. And if something got rejected, Milton would get out his banjo and we'd all sing Rejection, which was a song that he invented. And it was a wonderful, wonderful group and place to be in. And it was really the first real job I had after I got out of art school. I was 20. And that's where I met Myrna. And so Myrna would like to say something too. But one thing I wanted to say about Milton was that he always, no matter where he was, he managed to be in charge. and even the School of Visual Arts, I went to the School of Visual Arts. Milton didn't have any connection with it until after I left the studio. But when he went to the School of Visual Arts, he eventually ended up being the president. And he did a really fine job.
Of the board.
President of the board, excuse me. I think he was president of the school.
No.
Acting, yes.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
I just want, as long as I have the mic, I have to second what April said. I knew Milton from the age of 22 until he died. And you captured so much. I saw this once before, but in a smaller format, I think, or I'm trying to remember where. This was such a revelation and so moving that you really captured his soul. And so I want to thank you. And I do have a question. if people want to see this, is there another way?
Yes, but first I want to say thank you so much, Myrna. It means a lot coming from you because of your close association with him over those years. I have to say, watching this just makes me miss him so much, and I'm sure it does you and others who loved him. It is being distributed by Kino Lorber, and they will send you a link if you ask for it. Pay for it. I won't see any of it, but never mind.
Copyright is at the end.
Yes, well, I paid for that, but no, thank you. And anybody who wants to see it again or tell people about it, that's where to go. It's Kino Lorber.
Question here.
I wanted to thank you for bringing us this close to Milton. I tried to, when I moved to the United States in 1977 and went to SVA, it was the language that was all over New York was his imprint. I mean, he was everywhere, and so I went to visual arts, and he did all the posters, he did the catalog, and I'd been looking at it back in Toronto going, it's amazing. It's like the visuals are so great. And when I got there, it turned out he didn't teach until he only taught the evening. And I was a full-time student during the day, so I'd have to leave when he came in the evening. So I never actually got to take his class, but I was certainly, you could not be influenced by him just being at SVA and being in New York those days. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. The ripple effect is Steve Heller, who is a great spokesman for the design community and for Milton in particular, just talks about that impact that just goes on and on and on. And largely through his students and mentors. Well, no, people who live in the world and look around, but the students have been, incredibly impacted. And I made it a while ago, so I don't remember the name of the woman who was talking about being his student and understanding that even though social responsibility was never mentioned as a motive or a guiding force into the work, it was imbued into the class and into his talks about anything. He was just one of those teachers that has a message that does spread, thank God.
And I was in Europe, and I was a student, and I had a friend who was a little older, was a graphic designer. One day he came, and he's like, look what, Milton Glaser was a myth of his. And he came with this photo, this thing, and it was one of the Gristidi supermarkets. And he said, he's making the genius, he's making supermarket. This is great, this democratization and, that old part where he's, is designing the product that has to be attractive and hopefully health, but it was shocking in Europe that he would,
well, he
deign something as, Gristidi supermarkets. Yeah.
Grand Union. Oh. Yeah. But he
European.
he made the point of saying he wanted to make it more comfortable for the customer to go through these spaces and to understand where things were. You have a shorter visit, it's less stressful. And when he said that he learned naturally, he's always learning from the experience of working towards a bigger audience rather than the design elite that he is mostly known for. And that was a good exercise for him to really concentrate on how to reach not just the cultured people, but the people who go shopping in grocery stores, which is all of us.
Lana, right out here.
Thanks. Wendy, I think it's time you make another film.
Oh, no.
I have a suggestion. Kamala Harris up front and close.
Oh, yeah. Actually, at one point I thought I'd do a trilogy of three big men, Milton, Fellini, and Duke Ellington. And I thought, wow, wouldn't that be great? And then it was too too much to even consider. But I love the idea of three big men because they're all big.
Very looming large. Looming very large. There is one also. We're here.
Hi, I just want to thank you for the purpose of your film, which was preserving how articulate and wise this artist was. And it comes out right in the beginning of the movie where he sort of says that there is no one way to make art. It is more of sort of a parallelogram of many different things. And he said the same thing in terms of that you can find beautiful art in a teacup or a museum, that every stratification of production has its great art in the production. And I just want to put a shout out for this movie I just saw before I came here and left early. It's called The Red River, and it's all about the art of that's locked in the indigenous community, and it's only now being seen. So many things he said. He was wonderful on teaching. Teaching is under-recognized by our government, for one, and he had a lot to say that's only now becoming evident, and I appreciate your doing that.
There is something I must say, that you said the film is, as you said, is not been done yesterday, but there is all last part when he talks about the darkness and the light, and you know, and that we were optimistic in the 60s, and then things don't always turn out for the best. That feels really current. I mean,
Yes, sadly. I mean, this was shot in the Bush years and, you know, the invasion of Iraq. And then when I was showing it during the Obama years, I was feeling a little dicey about him, saying these are the dark ages of America. And I was thinking of putting a little coda on the end saying the political references are to Bush. But they certainly apply to our everyday experience right now, sadly.
okay, I think we thank Wendy.
Thank you for coming.